maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me, and I think everything is a shoot. And well, what I think's happened here is that a couple of things. Number one, there was kayfabe going on within Fox, and Megyn Kelly was like, I'm gonna go take my, ride my high horse out of here, and I'm gonna show you what I got over here. And well, it failed, and hey, I'm coming back. Or, hey, we're gonna create this little freaking rivalry between us, and I'm gonna go in there. I know what's going on. I'm ready to prepare to back out of my contract. I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna report. I'm gonna be on inside scoop, and I'm gonna bring the fire. Or she's just being a double agent. I mean, she's just kind of being a chess piece moving between both organizations, just trying to keep things relevant. Pay attention to that woman right there. She's up to something. She's up to something.
In a decade, Megyn Kelly was a fixture here at Fox. In early 2017, she moved to NBC, where among many other things, she anchored the third hour of the Today Show. It turned out to be a very turbulent year for NBC. NBC executives were caught covering up for accused sex criminal Harvey Weinstein. Meanwhile, the network's most famous anchor, Matt Lauer, fled the building after he was implicated in a laundry list. Admits that he abused an Italian model on tape, not national news.
Unfold as his book has come out, Ronan Farrow, Catch and Kill. The number one thing I've wanted to know is, what did they know and when did they know it?
Right.
Because I've been reporting on this story even while I was at NBC. I talked to Ronan, I talked to his producer, Rich McHugh, I talked to Rose McGowan, I talked to many Harvey Weinstein victims and accusers. Report on Matt Lauer, because we didn't even know that Matt Lauer was doing this. We had no paid out as a sexual harassment victim. They haven't gotten specific about what monies were paid out from their confidentiality agreements. NBC.
This probably would be known right now if the network had conducted an independent investigation. Last September, early September,
about whether there should be an outside investigator to take a hard look at this. Between the investigation NBC did internally on Matt Lauer to now this, there's the question of the faith and confidence of the public in the reporting of NBC on matters.
Look at the different lighting, too. You notice the different lighting? That's the same woman. That's the same woman. That's the same woman. See, that's the problem. That's a problem. That guys have to deal with. I mean, not even like a year ago.
Involving itself. And it's, to me, as a lawyer, it's just always better if you just send it outside, and then people can have more faith in it. And if there's nothing to hide, you have no worries about it. You have nothing to worry about.
So people's jaws hung open when you said that. There have been a couple of published accounts that say you were fired from NBC a little more than a month later for saying that. With that in mind, without even having you comment on it, I want to get your response to something that an anchor at MSNBC did 2 nights ago. Chris Hayes addressed the credibility of the president of NBC News directly on his show. He said this.
Oppenheim and others have also maintained since Farrow's departure 2 years ago, the Weinstein story was never broadcast because it lacked sufficient on-the-record sourcing, even after NBC supported Farrow's assignment for 7 months. One thing, though, is indisputable. Ronan Farrow walked out of NBC News after working on the Weinstein story, and within 2 months, published an incredible article, The New Yorker. The path of least resistance is always there. Beckoning seductively with an entirely plausible cover story. You've got bigger fish to fry. This isn't the hill to die on. The story isn't ready. But of course, it's the very ease of that path that makes it the enemy, the kind of work that we as journalists are supposed to do.
He's saying essentially what you said, which is he doesn't trust the management at NBC News. Given your experience, do you think he's in jeopardy of being fired?
No comment on that. But I will say the question is open as to whether they put dollars ahead of decency, about whether they were more interested in protecting their star anchor than they were in protecting the women of the company. There needs to be an outside investigation into this company. They investigated themselves. That doesn't work.
No.
Fox News, but that's the person who's investigating himself. If these are the people overseeing the investigation into
that wild and unsubstantiated allegations of sexual misconduct against people whose politics they don't. Lester Holt and Chuck Todd were all in this person who was capable of being objective on that question?
Well, I mean, there's no question that the reporting that was done at NBC on somebody like, let's take Julie Swetnick,
right,
who was the completely discredited alleged third accuser against. They had tapes, they had witnesses, they had Harvey Weinstein in order.
Tonight. Thanks to Ronan Farrow, in the last week, we've learned a lot about the lengths to which some NBC executives went in order to cover up sexual abuse. The details are so stunning that even some on the left, presumably NBC viewers themselves, have expressed outrage. Earlier today, the feminist group presidential primary debate on MSNBC until Comcast and NBC News take clear steps to clean up the toxic culture that exists across
Fox News and Fox News were hosting a Democratic debate in conjunction with the Washington Post.
Yes.
They'd be putting on the full court press to make sure the opportunity to sort of...
I think details in the book, maybe not so surprising, is that Hillary Clinton applied pressure to Farrow, he says, not to pursue the Harvey Weinstein story. And so...
person has come out. Truth is that we've seen already, there was Addie Zanone. She came on my show. I had her on my show. Was Melissa Launer, who said he exposed himself to her one night on Open Secret. So the question is, if they didn't know, why didn't they know?
Well, they're lying.
Why didn't they?
They're lying. About the state of justice.
The impeachment inquiry is centered on President doing something wrong while serving on a company board in Ukraine. I want to point out there's no evidence of wrongdoing by either one of you.
So what kind of journalist begins a question to a politician by reassuring him that attacks by his opponents are false and he's actually innocent? Is that a question?
So the answer was kind of baked into the question there, right?
It was.
You didn't have expertise in natural gas, paying for access. They're paying for, maybe he could have reworded that. Maybe he'd like...
Here, and it adds up to basically partisan interference in an election. I mean,
right before Trump was elected, Jorge Ramos of Univision came on my show, and we had a very heartfelt discussion about journalism in America, and he made a strong plea for journalists to abandon neutrality. He said, that's over. You've got to come out and you've got to say, Trump's a racist, Trump's a misogynist, Trump's a bigot. So whatever your view is, you've got to say it, you've got to sell it, and that the time for neutrality is past. And I do believe he's persuaded, and others have come to their own conclusion, that that's the way forward. That's why we had a question. There was another CNN debate where Don Lemon specifically said, how do you answer voters who prioritize the economy over Trump's bigotry? Right? So there's a judgment in there.
A judgment?
Yeah. Right. I'm just saying, okay, so fine. Many people may agree with that, but it's the anchor's subjective judgment, and it doesn't belong, in my view, in a debate question. Same way as the New York Times is arguing, the old schoolers with the young folks, about whether the Times should be, quote, part of the resistance.
But I guess the problem that I have with it is not that someone shows an opinion. I've got a million opinions. Is that they're lying about what it is. And they're saying, we're journalists, we're objective. Why can't they drop the pretense and be honest with us and tell us we're partisan combatants? Because they are.
We already know. I mean, that's the real joke, right? It's like, we already know. Fox News was founded 1996, right? They just had their birthday, on the premise that the other side of the stories weren't being told, and that half of the country was being ignored, and that if you did fair and balanced news, the people would watch. And there was a premise that the other media, the mainstream media, maybe they weren't far left, right? But that there was a baked-in bias against people who believe in homeschooling, who believe in a pro-life position, who might have a gun, right? And so they made a whole empire based on programming to those people. I think what's happened now on the other half of the country, on sort of the mainstream, is they've embraced it. It was sort of passive, and now it's active. Now it's, let's work. He's too bad. We have to work together.
Right.
We'll be judged. History.
Staying?
Sure.
We'll be right tomorrow. No, and we're happy we did. So I have to ask
Rob
you.
is a great interview.
So you spent all these years in the news business. You Veritas on CNN.
The President of the United States is going to get impeached and possibly bounced out of office. It's a major, major story.
I would say.
So I think that's defensible on the part of Jeff Zucker. But I do think sort of.
So you make up your minds.